Bake that down. This texture has a lot of detail in it. If you're doing a texture that was a little bit more neutral, like say this, you wouldn't have as much trouble blending it together. It's just because the texture that I'm using here has got a lot of really unique features in it. It just makes it a little bit more challenging to blend it together. But it's just such an interesting looking texture, I couldn't resist. And again, we've got those little white dots happening, which you could remove in Photoshop in the original texture, and instead of having to overpaint them like I am. I'm going to get rid of that streak there. And that white dot. A couple of the streaks probably would be okay. Let's add a bit more interest to the texture, but none of these long ones. And now I want to paint out some of these dots that are popping up here and there when I get the right texture color, that is. You can leave a couple in, just the ones that are obviously repeating, remove. Let's work on this top section up through here, I think. Again, I'll just rotate the model in Mari by holding down the Alt key and the left mouse button. And I rotate a texture by holding down the Alt key, the Control key and the left mouse button. And move it by holding down the Shift key and the left mouse button. And again, I don't have to worry about going over because it's being masked, so I'm not going to paint over any area I've already done. Just going to bake that down. So I'm going to rotate my texture around a bit. And I'll do the same on this side. I'll rotate it around 180 degrees the other way. That's just so the texture follows that edge a bit better. For small sections like this, probably not a requirement, but it's a good habit to get into anyway. Bake it down. Let's work on this top piece here. Now, because this top piece is actually hidden by most of the weathering, we could go with a lighter color, but I think I'll probably stick to the darker color just to be consistent. Oh, will I? Yeah, I probably will. I'm just going to make sure my model is angled correctly though, otherwise I'm going to paint on those edges and I don't want to do that. And if you can't get to it from one angle, go turn the model around, but no, looks like this side is probably the better one to go with. Just let me jump into the UV viewport quickly here. I'm actually going to paint in UVs, I think, in UV space, because I'm finding it difficult to angle the model where I can paint on it but not paint on these edges. Because to get the model angled correctly, I can't paint on the entire part of that undersection, and if I paint on it like that, I'm not getting enough masking happening. You can adjust the masking actually in the program, but at this stage I think it's easier for me to paint in the UV viewport. Just got to be a little bit careful I don't paint it in the wrong UV set, but this one is the one that we want, I think. Again, I'll come back and take out any of those white streaks that we're painting in. You've just got to be a bit careful painting this way with the scaling to make sure you don't muck that up. Again, I'm going to paint out those white dots. And I'm going to paint out that streak through there as well. Let's bake that down, and let's jump back into, make sure you bake it down before you change your viewports here, otherwise you'll lose what you've done. So make sure you hit the Alt key to bake it down. And now we've been able to paint in that without hitting any other sections of the model. Let's work on that top edge there. I think we should be able to get to that one quite well. I am painting into the diffuse channel Smurfberry Barbecue. How's things? Good to see you. So yeah, I'm working actually with Mari. They call it the color channel, but that's the diffuse channel. Yeah, you can add spec channels and normal map channels if you like, but I generally work just with the diffuse channel when I'm doing these paintings in Mari. Then I take my textures into Null to create the normal maps and any spec maps that I might need. I generally prefer to work with that program to do that sort of work. You get better visual. You can see better visually what it's going to look like. Although Mari can do it. It's just what you're used to, or what I'm used to. And that program's very good. Okay, let's just remember not to scale your texture like I just did there. Yeah, it's it's really good. It's a really good program. I've also used bitmap to material made by Algorithmic, and that's good too, but I find this much easier to use, much better to use, more control with Null. Shogun X, you're talking about Null adjusting the cage on the fly? If I'm doing a normal map from a high-res piece of geometry to a low-res piece, I generally use Max. I do that in Max. If you're talking about using a cage and rendering out normal maps that way. Yeah. But because I'm not going to be reducing the geometry in any of these pieces of this model, I'm not going to be creating a low-res version. I'm just going to be working all with the high-res version. But if you're doing game development, you'd have to create a low-res mesh and create the normal maps from the high-res to the low-res. Archviz, yeah. Cool. Yeah, no, that makes sense, Montrose, yeah. Yeah. Right. You know, another good program for for doing your normals is Mighty Bake. You can pull in your high res and low res meshes and bake them in that program, and that does a really good job too. And it actually prefers to work with models from Maya as opposed to Max. Max works with it fine, but it was created specifically to work with Maya, so that's something to look at. And it's pretty cheap as well. But hey, if what you're working with, what you're using is working, then I'm just giving you another option for another program that I've used that I think is good. Let's do these side edges here, I think. Again, I've angled the model to make sure that my masking is in full effect. That way I don't have to reduce my brush size here. I can just paint over without worrying about it. Bake that down. And bake that down. I'll rotate our texture around. Okay. Now let's check out the front here. Okay, needs a bit of work. And again, if I couldn't get the angle correct with the masking, I'd work in the UV space, but that should be fine, as long as we're careful. We don't want any of that white to show up on this one though, on this underside. Bake that down. Now we haven't done these inside pieces yet, so let's do those now. Now for this one, I may actually add one of these white streaks. I think that it'll be fine on one of these inside pieces. You're not going to notice it as being repeated because of the angle it's going to be on when you're rendering the model. Let's bake that down. And we'll get this corner down here. Let's swing around to this side. And we won't do any of the white marks on this bit here, I don't think. When we change it, when we create the second version, we probably will, to make it a bit more different. And again, we've got that white dot there that I don't like. So we'll get rid of that. Those two dots there, we can leave that. That'll be fine. Now I'm going to turn off masking here because I want to work along that edge. I'm just going to find where it is. Okay, I can see it there. And I'm going to pick part of the texture where I can blend them both together. Paint over that edge. And that's just so that we get a smooth transition across the vertical and the horizontal. We're going to do the same thing over here. It's probably not quite as bad, but just in spots here and there it needs to be blended together. Okay. We have to do these side pieces as well. And for that I'm going to turn masking, will I turn it on? Yeah, I'll turn masking back on. Again, we're going to go with pretty plain color, I think, here. Get rid of that white dot. And let's work on the other opposite side. Yeah, no, we won't put a white mark there either, I don't think. Yeah, I'm going to remove that white streak that we just painted in on the side. Bake that down. And paint that out. I want to get rid of that dot there as well. All right, let's turn masking back off again. And make sure that we blend these two edges together a bit better. And we're going to do the same thing. So those two edges there, I think, blend together okay. We'll just blend this edge here a little better. And we'll use this part of the texture, I think. And again, I think that edge there needs to be blended a bit better as well. And for that we'll use well, we'll match the texture streak that we see there and we'll blend across that way. Okay. Now it's just a couple of spots here and there that need to be fixed up. And here we can scale the model in a bit because we're only doing touch-up bits here and there. So don't like that white bit there, so I want to get rid of that. Let's jump around to the other side and check that one. And again, we're not getting a blend happening here, so we're going to have to paint over these side pieces with a bit of the dark part of the texture. I'm just going to angle my model probably like that. I'll bake that down. And also through here we've got a bit of stretching happening, so we'll fix that up. And just up in here, and just that white streak here along the top. It looks like we're getting some stretching happening there as well, so I'm just going to turn projection back on. Well, thank you, Montressier. I like to try and when I work, show people what my thought process is and why I'm doing what I'm doing, or help them if they're going to use the program to get better use out of it. I think that's important. I mean, I'm happy for people just to watch it, even if they have no intention of doing 3D. And it helps me too, my thought process, if I talk as I say it. I don't do it at work though. They think I was a bit strange. I don't like the way that they're blending together there. I'm just going to try and get that to blend a bit better. Maybe even by changing the texture up a little. Hey Galen, how's things? Someone told you sounded like you were doing a tutorial. Yeah, well, it is like a tutorial, really. That's why too, as I was saying, a lot of people will use a program to show you what buttons they're pressing while they're working. I prefer, and I learn better if people say to me, I'm pressing the Alt key now, or I'm pressing the Shift key now, or I'm pressing the Control key. It just sinks into my head a bit better. So as opposed to just being lazy and using a program that'll show you that what key I'm pressing and what button I'm pressing. my nice accent, Montressier, are you kidding? I much prefer an American accent. But hey, no one likes their voice, do they? All right. I'm also going to darken that edge up there. One part of the texture I don't like is that really dark mark. It's okay occasionally, but it happens. It's really noticeable in the texture, so you got to be really careful of it. Like here. In fact, I think I'll remove it from there completely as well. All right. Again, now I'm going to turn masking back off, because I want to blend this edge here in a little bit better. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. Just rotate my texture a little bit. Yeah, well, I don't use tell people every key press and button press either, but for Mari particularly, because it works differently than most other 3D paint programs, I always like to make sure press the Alt key to bake it down, because if you spend a half an hour painting up a part of the model and you don't press that Alt key, you're going to lose what you've done. So unless you set up Mari to do it automatically, which you can do as well. So yeah, it's really important if you're doing it manually to make sure you press the Alt key to bake it down. And see, with Mari, you have to hold the Alt key down to rotate the model. And on Macs, you don't do that. You just, well, you do actually, but I have a macro set up on my mouse to do it automatically if I'm not using the shortcut button down the bottom, which I usually use to show people what I'm doing. And I could set up a macro in Mari, but I think it makes more sense to explain to people which keys I'm pressing, and just to sync, so it syncs in if they do use Mari, as to what buttons they should be pressing at any time. Again, I'm going to blend that corner here in a bit better as well. I don't like the way, see how it's stretched the texture that way? Really got to watch the angle that you're painting on. And remember, we have masking turned off, so you've got to be especially careful. I'm going to turn masking back on just to fix up that corner there. I want to blend that a bit better. Okay, that bit of white there is fine. Okay. I'm going to leave masking on because we're going to start painting some dirt textures on this before we take it back into Max. So I want to keep masking on so I don't hit part of the model I shouldn't. Got my fresh coffee, so I'm all set. Let's throw down a new layer, and let's grab a dirt texture that we can start putting on the model. Let's see, what's this one like? Yeah, this one will work. I'm leaving masking on because I don't want to accidentally hit the top edges here. I'm going to scale it up a bit. Hey Sniper Echo, how's things? Good to see you. Okay, so we're on a new layer. I'm going to rotate the texture to follow the angle of that model. Now with this texture, we're really only concerned with the white part, so we're not even going to paint all the way down to the bottom of the black. But it's important to make sure you rotate the texture to match the model. Press the Alt key. And because we have our masking turned on, we can go right up to that edge without worrying about overpainting it. Bake that down. And I think I want that texture also down on this lower edge here. As I was explaining, before I paint that in, I'll turn masking on so that we have it set up the way it's going to look. Some people like to work this way, which I generally do. Other people prefer to turn the masking on and adjust it so they can see what it's going to look like as they paint it. So I'll do that for this bottom piece here so you can see what I mean. So as we paint it in, we're going to see what exactly it's going to look like. Press the Alt key to bake that down. Move our texture along. It just can help visually if you turn it on before you start painting so you can see, you know, the final result, instead of waiting till the end and then turning it on. Okay. Bake that down. Let's jump around to the other side and do a couple on maybe the second piece here. I always have to make sure I remember to unmute my mic. I'm always worried one day I'm going to be chatting away and you guys are not going to hear what I'm saying. Okay. I'm also making sure to rotate the model as I paint it on, because I don't want to be painting on an angle, otherwise we're going to get that stretching happening. And it's the same in any 3D paint program that you use, not just Mari. You don't want to paint on an angle. Okay, we'll bake that down, and let's do this bottom edge, I think, along here. Actually going to scale it up just a little bit as well. Alright, let's grab another texture and throw on another layer. Let's see. We did white on that one, so let's find a texture we can use where we can paint some dark dirt marks in. This one should work. Again, let's start here at this bottom edge here. Well, just because we painted one texture on doesn't mean we can't paint another one over the top of it. Just going to scale it back. Now with this one, we're more concerned with the dark part of the texture, not the white. So again, I'm not even going to worry about painting all the white in, I'm just worrying about the black. Bake that down. All right, we'll bake that down. Let's adjust our layer style here so we can see what it will look like before we start painting more. We're going to pull that right back. And again, because of a slight gamma difference between Max and Mari, it's going to look lighter in Mari and come in darker in Max. So just be aware of that if you're using Mari. All right, let's do that through here, but let's do it through there from the top. And thank you, Raphael Volta, for following my Twitch channel. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. So let's paint that dirt mark up through here. May scale it back a little bit as well. And again, I'm always rotating my model so we're looking virtually directly on. Okay. Let's swing it around to the other side. And let's throw that dirt layer on this along this bottom edge, but we'll rotate it 180 degrees this time. It's just adding a bit of color difference to the underlying texture so it doesn't look quite so flat. And like I said, it will show up a little bit darker in max. So okay. Let's also throw it along this edge here, I think. This is the interior where it actually meets the tile on the top of the terrace. So to have a bit of a dirt mark there would make sense because you're going to get build-up of grime. We'll break that down. It's subtle, but it makes all the difference in a render because it'll really pop in a render if you're close enough to it, of course. We'll bake that down. Let's just throw on one more layer and grab a different texture. Like I said, if you change textures, it's always a good idea to add a new layer. No, not that one. That might be interesting. We do white or black. Yeah, no, I think I want to grab one where I can throw a bit more interest of the black in. Again, these texture maps are just alpha maps or grayscale maps that I'm using for dirt maps. So you can take any photograph you have and turn it into a grayscale image, and then it makes a great dirt map. No, not that one. No. I know it when I see it. Yeah, maybe this one. We'll paint white, I think, on this one. I just want to add a bit more interest up through here. So I'll paint along that bottom rung there. Again, we're on a new layer. And again, as I'm painting, I'm just moving the texture map up and down a bit so that we have some sections with more of the white, some sections with less. We'll bake that down. just going to have to blend that again together a little bit better than that. There we go. Okay, we'll bake that down. And again, I just want to make sure that blends together a little better. And this bit down here on the end. We went over a little bit, but we're not going to notice that when we change the layer style here, so let's do that now. I think we'll go to an add on this one, and we'll pull it right back. Just noticing a bit of an error happened there, so I'm just going to touch that area up. Sure what that is. Let's throw down a new layer. Just going to overpaint this bit of an area here and bake it down. Very odd. So let me jump into my UV map for a minute and have a look at that. Just got to find the right section here. It's this one down here. All right. Let me just turn that layer off for a minute. And we're working back in our original layer here.